Welcome to the Fermented Homestead. Blah, blah, blah. Welcome to the Fermented Homestead. If you're new here, my name is Anna, and on this channel, I'm sharing our journey of learning how to turn our home into a homestead. Today is the first day of Fermented February, and I'm so excited to bring you the first video in the collaboration that we are all working on. Just to give you a little bit of a rundown on how this is gonna work, I did go ahead and put out a bit more of an in-detail video on kind of the inner workings of this collaboration, and we'll post that one up here, but really probably I'll post it down below because I'm gonna forget. We have 19 different channels, including myself: Farm Girl in the Making, A Good Life Farm, Acre Homestead, Bacon Grease Goddess, Becoming a Farm Girl, Bumblebee Apothecary, Freedom Homestead, Green Witch Homestead, Hamakua Homestead, Hidden Oaks Homestead, Morris Patch of Heaven Homestead, Mulberry Branch Farm, North Star Prepsteader, Row & Co Farms, Sage and Stone Homestead, Stivers Homestead, and That 1870s Homestead. I'm really excited because every single day of the month of February, with the exception of the 28th, which is I'll tell you about later, every single day I have a channel is going to put out a video. I'm going to take that video and put it in a playlist, the Fermented February playlist, that also is going to be linked down below. You're going to want to watch, of course, and comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all those lovely things for every one of these channels. Every single time that you comment on one of these videos, you are entered for a prize giveaway of a Mason Tops kit. I have one regular mouth Mason Tops kit and one regular mouth Mason Tops kit, and we're going to be giving away these live on the 28th of February 2022. So if you're watching this video after that, make sure you watch the playlist down below. You're gonna get some amazing videos. For the first video of this month, I thought that it would be amazing to bring you guys one of my favorite ferments, and that is Beet Kvass. I wanted to show you guys this video for several different reasons, mostly for people who might be a little bit new to fermenting. Beet Kvass is a recipe. I'm not sure exactly where it originates from. I think it's somewhere in Eastern Europe. But basically all you do is you take beets and salt water and put them in a jar. If you have organic beets, you don't need to peel them. If you have regular beets, you're gonna wanna peel them. You can use just salt, so you're gonna use a little bit of extra salt, or you can use a little bit less salt, and you can add what is called a starter culture to it. And that's where, like, if you have some kind of thing that's already fermenting, some kind of a vegetable ferment that's already fermenting, you can add that to it. Like if you have a bottle of sauerkraut or a bottle of pickles or just any kind of kimchi, you know, you could add any of that. You can just add a couple little tablespoons to it, and that will make it so that you can use a little bit less salt. The secret to using the starter culture is that that starter culture is going to inoculate the batch of vegetables that you already have fermenting, and it will jumpstart that process. The salt is there as a preservative for two reasons. One is to maintain the structure, the cell structure of the actual vegetable throughout the fermentation process. The other is to protect it from any kind of bad, icky kind of bacteria. And while it's trying to begin the fermentation process. So before the bacteria level gets to a certain pH, which is 4.0 or lower. I've heard you can go a little bit higher than that and be considered, but I generally consider 4.0 or lower to be completely safe and in the fermentation level. Adding the starter culture to it will enable you to use less salt by jump-starting, kick-starting, whatever you want to call it, the fermentation process. But that comes at a cost because it will change the flavor, which I'll tell you about in just a sec. For this video, I actually have the kvass that I started a full year ago. And this stuff is just long ferment. Anything is delicious for the most part, unless it has corn in it, and then it just turns to mush and it's nasty. If you have any kind of vegetable ferment, in my personal experience, the longer you ferment it to a certain point, as long as you're keeping track of it and keeping your eyeballs on it, the better. I wanted to go ahead and share this really long ferment with you guys because I know there's a lot of people who think that just because they forgot about it, maybe it's in the back of the fridge or something like that, that all of a sudden it is wasted. And it absolutely is not. It is better. The longer you leave it in the fridge, I think there might be some kind of a cutoff. I've never met that cutoff. But as long as it's not nasty, you can just eat it. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's just gonna have that much more of a developed flavor to it, which basically that is umami. When you're fermenting something, you're bringing out the umami flavor in it, and that's a, you know, you have a what is it, like a flavor profile map on your tongue, and it's one of those sections. You have sweet and sour and bitter and, you know, salty, all those sorts of things. Umami is one of them, and ferments is the way to get that. And umami, the best way I can think to describe it is it's a finished flavor. Like it's complete. Like it's not missing anything. Like your tongue is just happy. That's kind of a weird way to put it, but it's the best way that I can think to explain what umami is, and that is what ferments brings to it. You get the flavor profile to it. It amplifies anything that you add it to. You can add sauerkraut to literally anything and it will make it taste better. Along with the umami, it also brings better gut health. The probiotics that are in the ferments will go and they will help to populate your gut. For the most part, anytime you're eating something, you want to kind of eat the fermented version of it in some respects, so that you have the bacteria in your body to digest that food. It kind of helps, especially with fibers and things like that. Eating fermented foods is a great way to make it so that you can more easily digest cooked and or mostly raw vegetables much better, and you can assimilate the nutrition into your body. Another great reason that you might want to consume fermented foods is that the probiotics that are in that vegetable help to break down the vegetable that you are eating. Not necessarily the ones that you're going to eat in the future, but also the ones that you are currently consuming. So if you have digestive issues, if you have a problem digesting raw vegetables like I do, fermenting them can make them much more easy to digest. You can, most of the time, myself included, I consume fermented foods raw. I don't tend to cook them, but if it's going to be a flavor enhancer, I absolutely will. Like miso or miso, sauerkraut. There's all kinds of different things that you can add to the cooking process that will intensify the flavor of whatever dish you're cooking, the umami factor. But you can also add it to it once it's cooled off a little bit, and that won't kill the bugs that are in it. I say bugs, but I just mean the bacteria that's in it. Later on in this month, I am planning on doing kind of a fermenting 101, going into a bit more detail, going in depth, kind of some of the health improvements that you can see from this kind of thing, how to do it in much more detail, and why you would want to do it. So stay tuned for that video. It's going to be coming in the next week or so, hopefully. I'm still in the process of kind of doing all the finer details of the researching and it's figuring out exactly what I want to say with it, because there's so much to say. I hope that was a pretty decent introduction for you guys, for anybody who might be a little bit new to ferments. Why do you want to ferment? What's the advantage of it? What is it going to do for me? Why do I want to take that extra step? It's also a great way to preserve food. If you have a place like a cold storage, or if you have like a basement that doesn't get very warm, if it stays like 55 or below, you got your cold storage right there, and you can ferment all this food and you can just stick it down there and let it just ferment low and slow. The slower and the lower temperature, the lower the temperature that you ferment something at, the slower that it's going to ferment, and the more developed the flavors are going to be. And that's also the same thing if you add a starter culture, like I mentioned earlier. If you want to lessen the salt, add a starter culture. That's going to cause it to ferment quicker, and it's not going to have quite the depth of flavor that it would if you just fermented it with like wild bacteria. Ferment. If you have any kind of a cold storage, this is a very, very viable way for you to be able to preserve your harvest in an incredibly delicious way that is going to be very healing for your body. If you have cold storage, I'm super jealous because I do not. I just have 2 fridges out in my garage that I keep my ferments in because I'm weird. So welcome to the weirdness, and let's go ahead and get started on making beet kvass. So we are just going to go ahead. We're going to take our beets. You can do store-bought. You can do the ones that you raised in your own garden. That's what the ones in the other kvass are, ones that I grew. But this is, I think, 6 beets. Yeah, 6 beets, various sizes. This should probably fill this up. It's not an exact science. You don't have to stress about it. That's one of the reasons also that I picked this particular recipe, is because it's so forgiving. So for anybody who's new to fermenting, this is a great place to start because it's so easy. It is so easy, and it is so tasty. There's so many different variations you can do with it. You can add different spices, but for this particular round, we're gonna do simple, plain and simple, because that is what I like. And it's delicious, and this stuff lasts forever. This one will help you get over any kind of phobia that you might have of like accidentally fermenting it too long or anything like that, because this batch of kvass that I have behind us has literally been sitting there for a year. Exactly. That's why I'm doing this today, because it's been exactly a year. As soon as that thing got to about the 7-month mark, I was like, oh, we're going for a year. So I've been super excited to share this with you. But I wanted to wait until that was a year, because like, that's just, you Yay, a year. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of wash these off a little bit. You don't want to scrub the heck out of them. You don't want to peel these. You're not going to be consuming the actual beets, so it doesn't matter if you have like a texture thing with the peel or anything like that. The bacteria is on the peel, and so you're going to get a much better, much quicker ferment if you leave the bacteria and you leave the skin on there. But you do want to kind of wash it off a little bit, you know. And we have our 1 gallon jar. You can do this in any size jar that you want to do. You're basically just going to use 1/2 teaspoon per quart of water. That's kind of your ratio of salt. And that salt is enough to preserve it so it's not going to mold, but it's not so much that it's going to taste really salty in the end. I just find that it's the perfect balance. You can up that, or you can, I don't think you really want to go any less than that. Like, that's pretty bare bones. You can add a starter culture to this. So I could take a couple tablespoons out of that previously existing Beet Kvass jar, and I can put it into this jar, and it will help it to ferment a lot quicker. I don't like to do that though. There are some exceptions, but not very many. And basically, the main exception to that would be like a fruit ferment that will ferment very quickly no matter what, but you want to add the starter culture to it in order to guide the fermenting process so that something weird doesn't take over the ferment. That's basically the only time I can think of that I would actually use a starter culture, or one where you're doing something very specific. Yogurt, kefir, miso, tempeh, stuff like that. Then you'll want to do that. But if you're just going for wild fermentation, you're just going for lacto fermentation, you don't need to do any of that. I'd say that's probably a little bit, might be a little on the full side. I think I'm going to take some of this out and we're going to put it in this one. Oh gosh. Okay. So I think we're about 1/3 on each jar. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon to this and 2 teaspoons to this, and we're going to top it off with water, stir it, put a lid on it, and stick it in the corner. That's it. You don't want to fill it up too full because you want to give it a little bit of room. I've got the dirt over here just making that sound. Sorry about that. So we're going to put kind of a heaping teaspoon in that one, and then 2 teaspoons in this one. You can use more salt. It will help with the fermentation process, but it will yield a little bit of a more salty flavor. We're going to top this off with water. I'm going to use filtered or well water. You don't want to use unfiltered like city tap water that's going to have like fluoride or chlorine or anything in there. Anything that's been treated with chemicals, you don't want to use that because that will hinder the growth process of the bacteria. With this, we are trying to culture bacteria. We're not trying to kill bacteria. So you also want to make sure that you're not washing any of these jars with antibacterial soap or spraying them with bleach or anything like that. I've seen some people who spray their containers with bleach and just do it at a very small amount and make sure that enough of it is rinsed off and evaporated. I just don't feel comfortable with that. If you feel comfortable with it, go for it. Like, it's totally cool. But I don't like using anything antibacterial. I don't even have bleach, so it really wouldn't work out for me. So let's top these things off here. I'm gonna get lids for both of these. We are gonna go ahead, we're gonna put the lid on, and we're just gonna shake it just to kind of help the salt to dissolve. So for this jar, we're just using the flat to mix it. You do not have to take the step, but I figured since the prize is a mason top kit, I may as well use a mason top lid for this. I don't usually use it for Beet Kvass, but you totally can. Tighten it on there real tight. I found tightening it down fairly tight, like tighter than you would a canning jar, but you don't want to like crank it down like with like serious force, but you want to use some force. That just kind of helps keep any kind of bacteria, any mold from getting in there. Okay, so then on this one, same thing. I'm just gonna mix it up. This one, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna have to probably burp this. You wanna crank it to a level that you can loosen it, and you wanna burp it. And just what I did, you're just gonna come along and you're gonna loosen the lid a little bit and let any kind of air out and then tighten it back on. You don't have to do that if you have one of these, or if you have an airlock lid, you don't have to do that. But if you're using a flat like this, then you will have to. You have to let the air out, otherwise it could explode. not super likely, but this is a pretty sweet vegetable that we are using here, so you want to make sure you're being extra cautious, because the more sweet the vegetable is, the more sweet the fruit is, the more sweet the fermenting medium is, the more likely it is and the quicker that it will build up the carbonation. Also with this, I failed to show you guys the size of the actual beets that I cut these into. They're probably about 1/2 inch to 1 inch squares. You don't want to shred them because they will ferment very quickly. And if it ferments too quickly, it can mold. It's the same thing with carrots. Like if you want it to ferment very quickly, you're gonna cut them smaller sizes. If you want them to take longer to ferment, you cut them in larger sizes. The more the surface room, the more the surface space on it, the easier it is to ferment quickly, the easier it is for the bacteria to access the sugars in it. I hope that makes some sense. So let's get on to trying our year-long fermented Beet Kvass. I made this last year on December 25th. Yeah, it's Christmas. It doesn't really have much built up, anything really in here. It's not moldy. I've been watching it this whole time. It's good. Okay. That smells amazing. I don't think I'll be able to see the pH strip because it's so deep, such a deep red color, but we'll give it a shot. Oh yeah, no, it's just red. So that's not gonna work on that one, unfortunately. If you have a pH meter, you can test it. Okay, so let's give this a try. I can smell this one is not, it doesn't have an overly fermented flavor to it. Flavor, I didn't taste it. Over fermented smell to it. Okay, I'm just gonna get this over with. Oh. It almost tastes like, it has zero alcohol quality to it at all, but it almost tastes like wine. Like, it is so good. Hey, Robert. I'm gonna see if I can get Robert to humor me and try this. He probably won't like it, but I'm curious. This is not the one that I just made. This is the one that I made last year.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, it's the drink.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what this drink's all about.
It is a fermented drink, so bear that in mind.
Okay. It's palatable. It's earthy.
Earthy is generally the term that people use to describe anything involving beets, but it doesn't taste like dirt. Don't get me wrong.
No, it doesn't.
It just has like, it almost gives you a connection.
Say a health tonic.
Yeah, it's a health tonic. If you really like fermented foods, you'll enjoy this drink. He does not enjoy fermented foods unless it's like a spicy, hot thing. That's about all that he really likes. So I just wanted to get him to try it so that you could get a normal person's perspective on ferments. I tend to really enjoy ferments. If you like vinegar pickled stuff, you'll enjoy fermenting. Okay, so battery died. But I just wanted to start off with this one that is such a long-term ferment in hopes that it would help people to get over their fear of fermenting, to get over their fear of getting sick or getting other people sick. You'll know when the ferment is bad. It will smell bad. It will be putrid. It will be very off-putting to. You will not want to eat it. You will know when the ferment is bad. I'm gonna bring you back here in a week, 2 weeks to a month, where we're gonna try out this one and we can kind of compare the two to see how they are. It has been just over a month since we left our Beet Kvass to ferment, and now we are ready to give it a try here in just a couple minutes. I was not planning on letting this go for as long as I did. I was planning on checking it about a week or two, like at about the normal time that most people would check it and pull it. But things started happening with this one here, and so I just wanted to let it play out and kind of see what would happen. But I have not disturbed this thing at all, and so this is kind of just what it looks like. Let's go ahead and dig into our Beet Kvass. One of them we're going to dig into, and one of them we are not going to dig into, but I'm going to show you how gross it looks. Oh my. I've never tried doing a Beet Kvass ferment with the mason tops. Honestly, it was just an experiment, and it's an experiment I don't plan to duplicate. I've never experienced mold that was not obviously and directly my fault while using a mason top. So I'm surprised. I don't have a clue why this happened. But now we know. So with the Beet Kvass, I have always done in the 1/2 gallon mason jar with just a regular old canning lid, a spent canning lid. That's all I've ever done with it. So I'm really hoping that I can get this jar lid open because I've not really had much success because these things are freaking huge. This one looks amazing. It's flawless. It's perfect. It smells like Beet Kvass. It's a glorious smell. This other one here is going to be chicken food. And like I said, I could have saved this, but I was just, honestly, it was morbid curiosity. I was wondering what would happen with it. Once I saw it, I was like, let's keep going with this. And you can see it looks way grosser from the outside than it does the inside. But like, my face out of the way so we'll focus. There we go. So you can see that. It looks way worse on the outside than it does the inside, and that's why I just was like, let's go ahead and not do it. I had just kept it in these cabinets here. The way that I could have saved it would have been just as I'm going, I would have just kind of scooped off anything that I saw forming on the top, and that would have been great. Everything would have been totally kosher. So that's gonna be chicken food. And then, how do I want to get this out of here? I really don't want to spill it all over the countertop. This stuff is so red. Okay, we'll use this plate. So if it does spill, it'll spill hopefully on the plate. Still spilled it on the counter. Still. Oh my gosh. So you can kind of see it's dark and it looks like red wine almost, but it's not as dark as the other one was because that one we left to ferment for a long time. So the longer you ferment, the more it'll leach the colors out into the liquid. Okay. It's a really mild flavor. It is. I really like the long-term ferments. It's so delicious. It draws out so much flavor from the beets and the fermenting process. It amplifies the smell, the taste, everything just so much. I don't even know how to describe it. It's so much better when you leave it to ferment long-term. I know a lot of people are a little bit apprehensive to ferment for long-term, but as long as you're careful with it and you make sure to check on it fairly often, like I'm talking like every couple weeks maybe, you can go for a really long time and nothing is gonna happen. You're not gonna die, I promise. Like, it's fine, it's good. You will make it. You will be a survivor, I promise. It's okay. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to go ahead and post this as the first video of Fermented February, because it is something that is so forgiving and it is something that really you can very easily get into any time of the year, including February. You can just go to the store, buy some fresh beets that are in season because they are a cold weather crop. So you can go to the store and you can easily find these and you can start your fermenting journey. I hope that you guys enjoyed this intro to Fermented February, and I hope that you guys are going to take this next month if you're not into ferments just yet, but you're curious about it. I hope that you take the chance to watch all these different videos from people of every level of experience, and I hope that it helps you to kind of conquer any kind of fears or doubts or trepidation that you may have about fermenting. And I hope that you guys by the end of this month have started your very own ferment, and if you do, make sure that you let me know because I would love to hear about your experiences, what you guys have started to ferment. Make sure you guys let me know down below. So if you guys are new around here, make sure that you hit this little subscribe button that's going to pop up right here. It's going to be a little ball. That's my logo. It's going to give you a good time. And then up here, make sure you click on that video. That is something that Google says that you are going to enjoy. This video right here is another fermenting recipe. I believe I'm going to put fermented beets right here because it makes sense. And then up here is going to be the Fermented February playlist. Make sure you check that or click that and check out all the videos that are coming up.